I got the vanilla the other day. I didn't really like it. Wasn't as good. It wasn't as vanilla-y. Cheers. Keeping my eye on you. Am I looking spiffy? Man, I just had my schmangy out, my thingy. That's right. I do a show while homeless in a park from Los Angeles nearly every single day. We talk about a lot of things. What I'm doing is I'm pitching some ideas for television series that are based on the fact that I did nothing but watch the television from the time I was a kid. What do you want from me? I'm still writing the novelization to Linoleum Blown Apart, okay? I'm still writing that because it all has to be written out anyways. You need a book to go with it. You always want a book to go with it. I was checking out my book. I wrote a book called Two-Legged Animal. It's supposed to be ironic. See, I know, it's like Mr. Rogers, only more degenerate. You know what you guys gotta do? You know what someone has to do? You gotta go to, I go to, you know, Vaughn's, and then you put a banana on the thing, and then the lady's voice goes, "Move your banana." So someone needs to sample that. That's about the time I checked out of music, really, was when they were doing heavy sampling. They were using sampling in rap. They were using sampling in industrial, a lot of industrial samples, right? And in case you don't know, I've been threatened with people are going to make me the new Manson. That's their big narrative, which is, it's not that big of a deal because according to Tom O'Neill on Joe, what's his name show? I can't think of his name. Oh, I'm sorry, Seth Rogen? Oh, I'm sorry, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan show. That whole thing was a complete and utter psyop. But that is the scary part. Like I said, I'm from Detroit. I came up in the punk rock era. And they tried to psyop me there. They used my likeness in the death of somebody connected to the punk rock milieu. Hey, it's just like these guys do. What happened over here? Well, black guy did it. Oh, what happened over here? Oh, some white boy came along here. Right? Again, what the media does is they point out the differences in people and they ostracize those. They never talk about what brings people together. Okay?
What's your name, sir? Talk for an interruption.
Yeah, I'm busy right now.
Okay,
I'll talk to you later.
Hey, you have a great day, all right?
You too. So, what I did was basically recently moved out to LA, and I'm going to be writing my novel out here because in Michigan, they don't have any respect for my work, and de facto, they don't have any respect for me or anything that I do. Respect is earned, and I feel like I went out into the world and I actually earned this based on my work. You know, like I said before, my work was stolen, which proves that it is superior just for the fact that it was stolen. Right? And this is all very provable and real. But again, I don't run in those circles, and I don't really run in any circles. Right? I'm not a lab mouse or a fed rat. That's what I was calling people. What I discovered is not only is the information coming from social media weaponized, but the actual device itself is weaponized. And this is some pretty scary business, especially in light of people thinking that, you know, you're watching shows like Johnny Knoxville and this kid, Andre, whatever his name is, run around with cattle prods shocking each other. It's much worse than that. It actually sent me to get a CAT scan, and it was brutal. My brain was mush. And there's somebody online right now who's being under attack for this. Always check out my playlist, guys. I always change up my playlist. I talk about my real life because it's a sight more interesting than most. And I wrote a memoir. So I actually put my money where my mouth is. And there's nobody's going to turn me into the new Manson. I got news for you, pal. And nobody takes Henry from Black Flag to task for having creepy crawl tattooed right on his chest. He travels the entire world, does book tours and all kinds of stuff, right? But you're going to make me the new Manson? Yeah, I don't think so. Fucking trash. And what these people were basically doing, they're admitting that they're Fed rats. And they admit that these quote-unquote gangs are actually run by police departments. And we have people actually admitting that they're not only in the police department, but they are in a gang within the police department. So this is the kind of world that we're living in. And I'm one of the only channels where I talk about this type of stuff. And I talk about accelerationism, and I talk about tactics. Now, ridicule is a tactic used by a weaker force. We know this, right? It's a form of guerrilla warfare. So what is this tactic? What is the end result? Like, for me, it appears these on-the-ground LARPers, they just don't stop. It's never-ending. And it's very strange, too, because it might not be so much that it's organized. It might be organized in a way that we don't even think to know. And this is the kind of stuff that I was talking about a little bit yesterday. I gotta have my coffee. It tastes so good. It's better than the vanilla. I just gotta be honest. The vanilla needs some more vanilla. So I pitch ideas because I worked as a production assistant. It's as simple as that. And when I started, I was an extra. It's as simple as that. I was an extra on Kiss of Death. I like to talk about that one. That was really great. That was a great experience for me. I think it's a great film. I think it's a great remake. You know, there's not very many good remakes, but there are some that are really good. And it seems like we talk about that, like in my life, that there's a lot of recurrences that happen. Like I said, sorry, I was trying to cool down a little bit. Oh, I'm still all melty. It's still early. I power walk like about a mile at least. And, right? So I'm still coming down from that. So, I don't know what I was talking about. I know I gotta have this. She's gonna yell about the bathroom. The public restroom is right over there, so. There you go. This is life out on the streets. I talk about a lot of things that actually happened to me, right? And like I said, what I found out, a lot of stuff is organized. My wife actually married me because she was so convinced about this whole Manson narrative. They were convinced of it. They were convinced that I was going to self-harm. Now, when you think about it, who self-harmed? Who self-harmed? When you think about it, because they released all this information about the quote-unquote deep state. JFK or RFK Jr. is talking about this stuff right now. He's talking about people like Thane Caesar. I knew about this stuff over a decade ago, and he's talking about it in the mainstream. And so a lot of things that were happening about a decade ago are actually getting talked about in the mainstream right now. And so you have this notion of the deep state, and nobody knows really what the deep state is. Like I said, I believe I was part of this deep state when I was dealing with drug dealers in New York, and you know, dealing with this MDMA connection that was going around right at the time that it started getting shipped pretty heavily over in Europe, and that kind of created this Happy Mondays type of musical explosion that kind of came out of that culture. And like I said, I was always part of this kind of rock and roll culture, and that's what I put into my writing. You know, when I started writing, some of the first things that I wrote were actually love letters. I was writing love letters, and it's really funny because years later I was trying to get a couple of people's attention by writing underneath in their comment section. So it's like these recurrences that kind of keep happening in my life. And it's like, once these things are kind of set when you're a child, then you kind of can't really get out of it, right? Like, I'm the youngest in my family, and my family's priorities were never anything that was my priority. And it's kind of interesting. I'm finding that out in real life. And so as you go out into life, you're looking for this camaraderie. You're looking for people to be, to have this camaraderie with. You're looking for like-minded people. Right? You're looking for your community. You're looking for your group. Okay? And so that's why at the age of whatever I was, I think I've been out here almost 2 years now. I came all the way out here to Los Angeles, and this is where I'm going to live so I don't freeze to death. I actually went because of this targeting that my wife was involved in, and people were going around painting Cash for Smells in New York City. I had a Cash for Chaos shirt on because I did things on the ground for my book, Two-Legged Animal. I was dealing with these projections, and this is what I found out, and I found this out all this long ago, right? So what I also discovered when I was down in Florida was the fact that they were running self-harm ops. And I had actually left Florida. I went to North Carolina. I was getting ready to research my book called Ison. This is an unwritten part 2 of my memoir. I only have part 1, but I'm incorporating that into my show. I'm talking about my real life, and that would have been part of my memoir. And so when I was down there, I was experiencing this type of poetic, self-harming ideas started floating through me. Well, come to find out, if you deconstruct the Frances Haugen testimony, she talks about, but she frames it as though they were teenage girls more susceptible to doing harm. Well, what do I talk about on the show? I talk about things that we have in common, not our differences, right? Pointing out our differences is something for weak-minded, silly people, you know, people connected to the media, those types of people. So it doesn't matter if you're a vulnerable little girl. It doesn't matter if you're a little boy. It doesn't matter if you're a grown man. If they're running these ops, and it was well known that they ran a PSYOP using Facebook. It was in the newspaper. It was part of Media Deep Blue. That's the problem. Media Deep Blue is delivering you information. This information is weaponized, but what people don't understand is that your device itself is weaponized as well. And I talk about this on my show. Why? Because it's my show and it's interesting. And this is like the current events portion of the show before I start developing these ideas. And the ideas for these television series that I have, the 2 main ones, Linoleum Blown Apart, which we're taking a break from, and we're going into golden years right now. We have to keep the show interesting. We have to keep it moving. We have to keep your mind swimming around. We have to grow the show, and I'm not trying to be a quote-unquote influencer. Are you thick? Are you thick? I was born in the BC era before computers, pal. Okay? I'm not interested in being a quote-unquote influencer. I don't care. According to a guy who was on DeFango's show, he was making about $5,000 per month on his YouTube channel, and they took it away. Now he doesn't make anything. Of course, he's taken his viewers to another platform. Oh, well, your ass out. All right? So what does this mean? It means that they're only paying for a certain type of content. That's it. The game is rigged. They switched the rules around. Well, like I said, when I was coming up, there was no Vin Diesel. There was nobody who was openly mixed or otherwise. I consider myself a Lumbee native. I always will. A First American, a Native American, what they were called. They're called Maroons, and they used it on the Bugs Bunny show for a reason. He was putting it in the pejorative. What was he calling people? He was calling you a Maroon. You're an idiot, right? You're lost. you're not from here. And that's the best part about it was he was a rabbit. He was native to that area, right? He was the native to the area. Who was the Tasmanian devil? He was a maroon. Get lost. Someone dropped you off here, pal. You look lost, okay? And so we all know that the term maroon means red. And so you have the red man. You also have the notion to keep counsel, which is R-E-D-E. Hey, how's it going?
All right. I want to apologize for the other night. I was thinking about Ginger being sick, and I didn't. After I told you, maybe we'll have a drink, and then I'm sitting there drinking, and I didn't even offer you anything.
Oh no, we had a drink.
Yeah, well, after I poured it, you're all going. I was like, oh my god. And I thought about it later, and that's not like me, you know. I said,
Oh, that's all right.
You know, but the next time,
Yeah.
I'm gonna buy, because I usually get just what I need for myself, and I wasn't, like I say, but then when you were here, and I just dawned on me.
No, yeah.
So I just, from my own, because the way I am.
Yeah.
You know, I said that, and so I'm gonna make it up to you, even though you're like, whatever.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, so next time.
Thanks, yeah. I'm gonna come over and talk to you in a minute. I'm gonna do my show.
Actually, I'm taking off right now.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on, but it's.
You're not gonna hang out here?
It's gonna get hot. We went to the promenade yesterday. It got so fucking hot.
Where is that?
3rd Street Promenade.
3rd Street Promenade?
In,
Santa Monica?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Maybe if you see each other later, that's cool too.
Okay.
But like I said, I never know where I'm gonna be. What I'm gonna do.
All right.
All right.
All right. Good to see you.
Later.
Yeah. So you could see I'm actually meeting people here. I signed up for the senior center here, and I'm finally getting some benefits that I need, and probably maybe some treatment that I deserve. And I didn't deserve what happened down in Florida, and I didn't deserve what happened in Michigan. Being gaslit, being targeted, having my wife laugh about it, that was brutal. And you're busted. That's it. You're done. You're sunk. But again, we're talking about the weaponization of social media, and it's not just the propaganda that's weaponized. I told you that you're getting separate information, you're getting different information than somebody else about the exact same subject matter. This is how complex this nexus is. That's how complex it is, right? There was some people last night, it was really funny. They were over there smoking weed. Oh man, this girl had like a whole thing full of weed. I don't smoke weed anymore. I had a drink with a friend of mine. But what are you gonna do? Well, the last time I drank a beer. I don't really think I'm gonna really drink too much beer anymore. I don't know, it's hard to say, but the reason I drank a beer that one day, I didn't have a beer for the 4th of July, and then I knew I drank too much caffeine, and I'm like, oh man. They have instant espresso that they sell now. Thanks a lot, Starbucks. Remember I used to do my show live from a Starbucks? I still enjoy doing that. So what are we talking about a little bit? I was talking about the notion of self-harm, and Frances Haugen was actually talking about this. She said she worked in this inauthentic behavioral division of Facebook specifically. This is where it was coming from when I was in North Carolina after my divorce, and when I told my wife that I was going to hire a lawyer, that's when they began crushing me the hardest. And it turns out that they were crushing me the entire time that I was in the state of New York. They were crushing me in the state of Michigan, and anyone who has this device can aim it at you and use it on you. You know, this is really unconscionable, and I told you before, they'll use this device on you, and they'll also record it at the same time. And then they'll put it online, and they'll make money off of it. And this is where you get a lot of these Karen creators. People are being electronically triggered through their device. Is this a litigious event yet? I doubt that it ever will be. And again, when you're talking about using this device on a person such as myself, what do you think it might do to some animal? What if you pointed it at an animal? Look what they were talking about in the Biden White House. They were talking about his dogs attacking people. Well, what does that tell you? This could be that electronic shock collar, okay? And this could be the electronic shock collar that's kind of propping him up at this point. with all due respect to the office of the presidency, it appears to me that if you have a person like Dick Cheney, who has a artificial heart, and they have a pacemaker that takes batteries, and they're using this type of weaponry willy-nilly, my wife is using it on me? Excuse me? You wouldn't be using it for 10 years, lady. You would use it once and tell the guy to go pack his bags. You're busted. It's as easy as that. So we can take this thing however you want, wherever you want to take it to. Because I was the one causing people to climb up on buildings and paint cash for smells. Okay? So when you want to look at it that way, that's my power. I made you get up there and do it. I made you get up there and paint it. Now didn't I? That's how much power, oh, little old me, happen to have. Right, Cash for Smells? Yeah, absolutely. So, again, I'm an old punk rocker. I told you that I came up on the Walk on the Wild Side, 1970s, of David Bowie, Lou Reed, people like this. Then I got into the no-wave music that was coming out around that time. I was always enveloped into classic rock, right? I went out on the streets. And before I knew it, when I came back from living on the streets, I was already targeted. That was it. People in Michigan couldn't handle it. They couldn't wrap their minds around what I did out on the streets. It was all just this big gossip thing. But what made it worse was the weaponization of this technology. Now, I got my smartphone in 2012. And so once I got that smartphone, that was it. We got our smartphones, me and the slope-shouldered manatee of a fuddy-duddy, got our smartphones in 2012. So all of this stuff can actually be traced, but it'll never be traced because it was coming from some pretty powerful sources. And I know who those sources are. I know who these people are. I know who Yolanda was, my ex-girlfriend. Okay? Nobody else is supposed to know who she is. It makes me wonder what we would find out through a lawsuit. It makes me wonder what would be exposed in a lawsuit. Okay? I'm not a lawyer. I don't give a shit. And I don't need any money. That's the key to a lawsuit. The key to a lawsuit is getting somebody, quote unquote, paid. You see these signs all over town, right? You want to sue somebody? Well, call us. Go right online. We'll help you out. We'll get you a paycheck, right? You see it all during the day, during all your judge shows that you used to watch back in the days of cable access. Right? Go ahead and sue somebody. Well, what I know to be true is this. They ran suicide ops, self-harm ops, I mean to say, when I was in North Carolina, through my app, through Facebook, and people I know were laughing about it. They thought it was hilarious, and that included my ex-wife and people in my bands. The bands that I played in. My bands. The songs that I wrote. Okay? Most people are so thick, they don't understand that I don't care if I make $1 million in this lifetime. I don't give a shit. I care about my life's work, and I'll die for that life's work. You understand? I'll give my life for it, but I won't give my life for any of my so-called friends or family, because I don't have a family. I don't have any children. Okay? They ran ops on me so hard, I had to go get a CAT scan. That's how damaging this is. And I'm just now healing right now. Okay? So if there's a lawyer out there, you want to sue on my behalf, you can open up this whole wide basket. But what you're not going to do is set me up. And I don't care how many LARPers you can send around me. Okay? That's for sure. Because I'm fully confident. You can see I come on, I do my show, I'm fully confident. Really care. I can discuss these things. I can go into the minutia of this show. And depending on what happens today, I think I might go into this minutia. I think it's a great idea. And these are the ideas that I started developing once I came off the street. I got in my million words, writing my ass off in a jailhouse in Las Vegas, while people in Michigan are fucking giggling behind their hand. I call them giggle behind the hand crew, grievous bodily harm, GBH, green jello for breakfast in the hospital. That's what I call them. Bunch of phonies. Oh, absolutely. And this was full tilt boogie on me, and this lasted for years. And what I had just found out was some phony there was shit talking me for 30 years. And when I went to go shake his hand and introduce myself to him, he looked at the ground like one of my bitch sisters. Absolutely. So, you know, that's my real life. But what I like to talk about is this tech and what's going to happen. What are we accelerating into? Now, they started talking about the deep state, right? Well, it's about 7 years ago now. It's around the time of my divorce, right when everyone was getting derangement syndrome. They started talking about the deep state. Ooh, what happened? Oh, people started self-harming by hanging off of a their door. They tried to say that it was what do you call it? They tried to say that it was sexual asphyxiation, right? It was masturbatory asphyxiation. I don't know. Could it be that common? So when somebody like Anthony Bourdain, who everybody loves, self-harms, you have certain members of society, maybe people who read mystery novels, maybe people who read books written by Fletcher Prouty, guys like me, right? Who are wondering like, whoa, this guy's worth a lot of money. It seems very strange that he has a daughter, a 2-year-old daughter, and he's going to self-harm. That doesn't really seem correct, right? I read Medium Raw, by the way. I didn't read Kitchen Confidential. But I'm out here pitching ideas for a television series. So you could see, quite possibly, a show like The Bear that's really huge right now. Why wouldn't Anthony Bourdain start getting into... He's already into television. Why wouldn't he not get into a... Right? Why wouldn't he not get into a fictionalized version of a kitchen? That story sounds like it would come directly from Anthony Bourdain. And I'm not saying the people who created the show The Bear had anything to do with his death. I'm saying that somebody might have ran the same ops on his device that they ran on mine. But I wasn't so stupid as to do anything. And possibly the person who was running the op had a stand down order, and they said, no, let him stand down. Stand down. Don't crank it all the way. This is corroborated by Frances Haugen, and if you're going to wait for some politician who doesn't even know you exist to do your bidding, well, you're going to be waiting a long time. Okay? Every city is incorporated. Okay? Every politician and every police officer works for the corporation. What does that have to do with you? Very little to none, unless you're breaking the law, unless you're an insurance risk. They work for the insurance companies, pal, not for you, and certainly not for me. And that's the way I was treated in Michigan. In case you don't know, I was hit by a car and I was sent home from the hospital. There's nothing wrong with them. I can't remember I remember, it's in my book, Two-Legged Animal. I remember what happened before I got hit by a car, and I remember waking up on my couch. You're not supposed to go to sleep when you have a concussion. When you have swollen brain syndrome. Wow. You see me, I'm still here. Right? Pitching my ideas. Well, maybe like Anthony Bourdain. Right? He made a lot of people a lot of money for a lot of years. His books probably still sell. Right? It's very bizarre that he would self-harm like that. It's very well known that, sorry, I didn't mean to come so, I'm like, and then another thing, that these social media sites are not only weaponized information, but they are actually weapons. And the Google proves it. And if they were using this neurological shock collar, right? Now, when my wife was using it on me, and she's not a police officer, and she worked for a nonprofit, a public-private partnership, so unless she took training through the FBI, I don't believe she was issued that weapon. And I don't believe she was using it correctly. And I believe that because I watched her mother swimming around in her turds before they flipped the switch on her in the hospital, that I know that I have the satisfaction in my heart to know that she's going to do the same thing. She has the same fate. The same thing's going to happen to her. Why? Because I was worried that the same thing was happening to me that happened to my father, because I became my father for a while. Now I'm my own man. Now I'm fully confident in everything that I say. And I don't need any friends or any family. I seek camaraderie. Why? Because it's part of the human condition. I told you we're mammals. We're not animals. Take a look at the dogs over here. They got a dog pen. What do they want to do? They want to hang out with each other. And kind of like me, they want to sniff some butts. Hey, what's wrong with it? What are you going to do? Sorry, pal. This guy doesn't like it. Don't worry, I won't sniff his butt. Yet. Right? So, just like a mammal who are seeking camaraderie inside the dog park, we're the same way. Right? And that's why I'm old enough to remember members of the LGBT community wanted to get married. Why couldn't they get married? Well, maybe it was because of insurance purposes. Hey, we don't want to insure these people. Don't ever forget that Obama was against gay marriage. Everybody seems to forget that. I thought he was the big liberal. Well, I've spent time on both sides of the aisle, and I don't know if you guys know this, but they put out tons of fake videos. They put out videos of this person over here has said something to me before. These are LARPers. They know exactly who I am. They know what I do. And they want attention, apparently. They put out tons of fake videos of Michelle Obama with a penis. You guys ever see these videos? I did. Why? Because it was based on what I was clicking. And it was based on the algorithm. Oh, are people trying to trick an algorithm? Yeah, I had it tricked. I had it tricked the whole time. They sent me everything. I could tell you guys all about what they were sending to the people on the right side of the aisle, because I spent 10 years over there. See how it works now? See how it works? Yeah, I can tell you exactly how they indoctrinate people, because I'm not on that site anymore. I'm not on Facebook. This was coming from, this is all confirmation bias. Once they find out that your clicky, clicky, swipey, swipey, scrolly, scrolly, likey, likey is of a certain proclivity, then they start feeding you information. And this is the AI that's ascribed to you. This is the AI that's part of this entire nexus. So don't think because you're going to go and change platforms that this platform over here doesn't know that what you're doing over here. Right? They're going to know. You can go to Rumble, or you can go to whatever other site that you want to be on. If you're alt-white, you can go wherever you want. But every single site is going to know what you were talking about over there. And, you know, again, they listen to every single conversation that you're in. I was just talking to a friend of mine, and it was really funny because this friend, it reminds me of another former friend of mine. I call him Nicky the Greek. He's a mama's boy from Queens, New York. Lived with his mother his entire life, right? And dominated, obviously. And that's with all due respect. But it's just the way it is, because you don't have any balance, right? And so what happened to me? He has, what do you call it? Olive complected, and he's dominated by his mother. What am I? I'm olive complected. I don't speak Spanish. Dominated by my mother. So we gravitate towards each other. Here's another gentleman. I think he's Hispanic. About the same size as me, right? A beta male. And boom, here we are. We gravitate towards each other, right? Non-sexually, obviously. This is just a friendship. But you gravitate towards certain people in your life, okay? It just happens. This is what I'm talking about. I became my father. I started dating women that were a little bit too close to like my mother. It happens. If you have a parent who's an addict, you might marry or hook up with an addict. It's going to happen. And I find these similarities. This is what I call the recurrence. Okay? That's why I reached a certain level of my life, and it has nothing to do with this neurological weapon. I reached it at my age. Okay? It has to do with my age and who I am as a person and my own experiences. Okay? And what people don't get, and that the slope-shouldered manatee of a fuddy-duddy is getting right now, because she is the age that I was when I went out and I changed my life before she came into it, but when I went to go befriend her and trust her. And the entire time, her whole modus operandi was that I was going to die at the end. Take a look at my community section. I prove it. I prove it. And that's why she'll forever be an obsequious Philistine. Guess what my mother is? She's an obsequious Philistine. She has an appeal to authority, which is a logical fallacy. She has a natural appeal to authority, right? And, sorry, I can't see very well now. Okay? And so did the woman that I spent 7 years with. I feel like you shouldn't really hit kids. I don't have any kids not to hit, but I don't hit dogs and I don't hit kids. I got a thing about children and dogs, right? You know, when it comes to pornography and catching a beating, you kind of want to leave them out of it. Okay? And, right? But what I considered as a child was very abusive. I don't want to be hit. I know how to speak the English language. If you want me to do something, you can explain it to me because I'm smart enough to understand it. You're going to hand me a Bible? You're going to hand me a Bible and you expect me to grasp these concepts when I'm 5 years old, but yet you're going to hit me when you're asking me not to do something? How much sense does that make? When people to this day, they can't even, not even we were handed the Living Bible. We were not given the Holy King James. What does that mean? Yeah. Does that make any sense, right? But when you start going to school, you develop this appeal to authority, right? And now we call them essential workers. Well, what are we accelerating into? We talk about accelerationism. What are we accelerating into? We have this cancel culture on the left, and that's why they don't care about the right being as armed as they want. You can stack up on as much guns and ammunition as you want. Why? Because they have this neurological weapon that was used on me willy-nilly. And it was used by people with friends who were police officers, not actual police officers, and I know who these people are. I know who they are. Right? But we all know that justice, sorry, I got something on the screen, whatever. We all know that justice is not tangible. Justice is arbitrary. So when you have people clamoring for justice, it's oblique, it's obscure, it's this intangible thing that you can never achieve. It's almost like the notion of utopia, right? So when you have somebody like Mark Fisher, who's another one of these people who understood that, you know, part of what I wrote in the title, you have this whole notion of holier than thou cancel culture that I was talking about before. He said he was disaffected because why? He was a writer, he was a thinker. His name's Mark Fisher. You can look it up yourself. I used to leave all kinds of stuff in the description. Fuck you. Go watch another show. I don't care. I don't need you here. If you're not going to participate, then go watch something else. Well, Mark Fisher ended up self-harming. He said that we live in an era that we're always waiting for the future to come, and it never arrives. And when did he self-harm? He self-harmed around the same time as Anthony Bourdain. Isn't that interesting? I find it interesting. Who else self-harmed? Who else self-harmed? The kid from Lincoln Park, right? What if it was their device? It's not Mark Fisher. It's not Anthony Bourdain. It's not the kid from Lincoln Park. It's their device. Right? So you have people on the right where I spent years and years and years. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in watching a Rothschild's documentary. Like a bunch of phonies. God, give me a break. It's a lot more complicated than that. And this is what I'm trying to tell you. Now, if you're feeling out of sorts, please go smoke a joint with your doctor, right? This is not a medical show. I'm not trying to give you any advice. What we're talking about are things that nobody else are talking about. And what I resent are people that I actually know. Not some stranger on the street. Not some Karen, right? But people are getting electronically triggered through their device. And when I told my wife that I was going to sue her for divorce, well, she was so stupid. If you had all this technology, then why didn't you just look in my bank account and see that I didn't even have enough fucking money? The reason was it didn't matter because they knew I had a case. And so what did she do instead? She participated in Schadenfreude. She had him crush me. And I went to go seek help. You see how easy it all is? And again, this self-harm, this neurological weapon was used on me for about 15 years. Some of the last places it was used was right here in Los Angeles when I first got here. Okay? And like I said, I spent time out on the streets, and that's when I discovered. I don't have to read a book about the deep state, because that's when I discovered that African-American bureaucrats, people who work for the police department, actually work with white people, predators, not part of the LGBT community, to put on recordable glasses and set you up. Cash for smells? Ain't that right? That's right. That's right. So I always knew all this. So when I went back to Michigan, I started Linoleum Blown Apart. I wrote a dozen songs. Okay? I don't have great versions of the demos, but they're demos. Who cares, right? I also was getting my writing together. I got in my 1,000,000 words, and that writing went into a book. Eventually, it was called Two-Legged Animal. It's always available. It's under my name, right? And so I kept writing and writing and writing, and I said, well, I'm going to write another book. Okay? I'll write another book. I'm going to call it I, Son. I'm going to go get FOIA request and figure out, about my arrests. And I was thinking about saving my hospital records. Well, guess what? If they don't hold on to your records for more than 7 years, then how is there a record of anything? That's why I'm for, digital record keeping. And because I've read books years ago, I know that I read books years ago. Sorry, I forgot what the guy's name is. Necropante, being digital. That everything you type in, everything, you cannot erase anything. Now, whether or not Google, the name Google means it's weaponized. It's a bastardization of the Google, which comes in terahertz. And yes, that's HURTS. I'm a living testimony to that. Right? It proves it can be weaponized. Well, what if they say, hey, we need some emails. We need some emails from 2010. Sorry, man. Our servers only keep stuff for 7 years. Well, here you go. Now we're back into the schizophrenic future. So what's the point of being digital? So this is how Mark Fisher got disaffected. He's a great thinker. He was a professor talking about things that nobody else is talking about. He's using music. He was using jungle music. They call it jungle. I don't know what it is. I got out of it. That's the Happy Mondays MDMA thing that was going on. I was into oi punk, and I still am. Classic rock, oi punk, rock and roll. We're going to talk about that for a little while. In a little while, right? So he becomes so disaffected that he ends up self-harming, and he ends up self-harming around the same time that a couple other people did. Now, what were they feeding me? What was my indoctrinatable AI that's ascribed to me that they were tweaking? Somebody was tweaking it through Facebook, and this was a Fed rat, and this went from New York to Michigan, and I got people who think that they know me, bragging that they know people in these circles, right in Facebook emails. But like I said, what's the point of writing this book, I, Son, when I can do it on this show? Because the medium is the message. This is my show. I do my show nearly every single day. And what are you going to take away from me? The only thing you could take away from me is my life. I can't get any more broke. I can't get any poorer. I'm starting right at the bottom. I don't care about being an influencer. You're not going to make any money on YouTube. And you can't come on here and espouse a certain point of view, or make videos. Say you're making wacky and wild videos, and you know exactly how to work the algorithm where you're making money. And then you think you're going to go to Rumble, and you're going to have a political show on Rumble, and you don't think that it's not going to join into the Nexus? And that good old YouTube isn't going to find out about it? And maybe kick you off? Did you ever think about that? I think about a lot of these things. I know for a fact that we're heading into a cashless society. Now, they decriminalize drugs, right? And everything's KDD, knowledge through data discovery. Well, what are they doing? They're figuring out who has a proclivity for using drugs. They just found out that essential workers would rather drive through a city without being clogged up in traffic. What do you think is going to happen to all these people who aren't essential? What do you think is going to happen to them? Why do they keep telling us that there's too many people on the planet, but yet there's other stats showing that over the years, people aren't being replaced? Right? They're not having enough babies to replace people who are passing away. Those two statistics don't make any sense, right? But when you're living in a schizophrenic future, you're more apt to believe it. It was the elites who brought opium into China. And then China brought opium to the United States. Remember the opium dens? They were run by the Chinese here. It's right in, God, what's that movie with Rooster Cogburn? Yeah, right? Right? It's right in those movies, right in the books. That's who the elites were. That's who started Skull and Bones. That's who the Atlantic power structure of the elite are. It sure isn't someone with a different skin tone who's in your same median income. That's who's doing it. So why are we believing this story that there's billions of people in China? Yeah, they got a lot of people there, sure. But they also have something called the Potemkin Village. They have ghost cities there. They have cities where you fly over and you make it look like a city, but there's nobody there. Take a look at the terracotta warriors. Why do you think all those terracotta warriors were made? Those terracotta warriors in China are a clear example of a Potemkin village. It's a clear example of that, because you can line the hilltop with all those terracotta soldiers. So when the enemy comes through the valley that you know that they're going to come through, because there's only one way they can come, they're going to look up and they're going to see all those warriors. And they're actually going to believe that There's all these extra men up there, but really they're not. They're not there. It's a phantom. They don't exist. It's a psyop. It's a psychological operation. It's guerrilla warfare. And it seems to me that this guerrilla warfare is happening right on your device. You're being gaslit. You're being teased with stories. You're being sent things. All of a sudden you'll be scrolling your device and all this negative stuff starts coming up. Whoa, 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 whoa. What's happening? What's happening? I called it the Cinderella effect. That's what I called it. Now, I lived through all this stuff. Look at the people who didn't live through it. Do you know how intense those self-harm ops were that they ran on me? You know how intense they were? And I was being gaslit by people who thought that they knew me. Now, that's the problem. And that's still going on to this day. People gaslight me because I take the mick out of the Manson mythos. Complete mythos. Hey, so did Joe Rogan. What are you going to do? You going to blame me? Yeah, sure, they sure will. Right? I take the mick out of something that was on our required reading list, who was talking about, it came out in the punk rock era, about what? A disaffected teenager. What are we all? We were all disaffected teenagers. We all want to rebel. That's the age that you do rebel. That's the age that you go out into the world and you experience things for yourself. And you might fight your father, or you fight the parent that you identify with. No, I'm breaking away from you. No, I'm not going to be oppressed by you. Right? And that's the importance of this communication, and that's what's important, why you don't vilify groups of people. Right? It just doesn't make any sense. And this leads to oppression. And when you're telling people that they've been oppressed, right? What's that guy's name? It's gonna bother me. There's a guy, he's connected to Stratford. That's an intelligence agency, and he appears on a lot of podcasts. Peter something or other. I talked about him before. You guys got to check out my show anytime you can. Please just put it on. I always have problems with the lighting, and I'm always talking. I got snot in my nose. What are you gonna do? Right? His worldview, I don't hold the same worldview at all. The way he thinks the world runs is not how I know the world to run. Okay? I have a different belief system. It's the same if somebody's a Baptist and somebody, right, is a Catholic, or somebody is an atheist. We have to have this separate worldview. Oh, and I forgot to look it up. I'm going to look it up right now. Maybe we can change the show around a little bit. It's Cormac McCarthy, Samuel Jackson, Tommy Lee Jones. Oh, I didn't put on my schmangy. It's called something or other. Yeah. We ho Wi-Fi, we ho Wi-Fi. Hey. Don't forget, George W. Bush was a cheerleader. I still love that movie, Bring It On. It's my guilty pleasure. And by the way, I'm here because of television shows like The Banana Splits and The Monkees. So let's not forget that. I'll pitch my ideas. I'm a production assistant. I'm an actor. I get right out there. One of the best times I had on set was with Mark Core, who shot the Green Day videos. I was working on a Joan Osborne video, and I was working as a second AD, and I was, getting the talent excited. Come on, man, come on, do this performance. We need to get this shot. And there was a guy, he was dressed like a genie, and he was a DJ. That's all I remember. I remember a couple things from it. So this is, oops, there it is right there. We can go. Yeah, it's called the Sunset Limited. I believe that's a train in Chicago, maybe something like that. Right? Okay. So you have this Cormac McCarthy, the Sunset Limited, and you have somebody like Mark Fisher. And in the Sunset Limited, you have Tommy Lee Jones, and he's a professor, and he is an atheistic professor, and he goes to self-harm, right? He goes to self-harm because he's just filled with this a priori thinking, all this inductive reasoning. There's no deduction here. He can't deduce anything. He can't go out into the real world and prove anything. Why? Because everything's already handed to him. Oh, look, no, we have evolution. You're nothing but an animal. Oh, look where we're heading. We're heading into the mousetrap future, right? That's what you are. You're a lab rat. That's all you are, okay? And we have to work symbiotically with each other. And you become completely disaffected. So what does he do? He goes to self-harm. That's what he goes to do. What's the next logical conclusion, right? But it's pretty scary, right? It can be pretty scary when this harming, this self-harm, is actually connected to your device. That's worse. That's worse because why? Because we all have these existential crises. That's plural, more than one. And you're supposed to. You're supposed to have these existential crises. You're supposed to have anxiety. Oh man, sorry, the lighting. You're supposed to look like somebody out of the Munsters without makeup. I swear. Right? We're gonna have these moments in time. Sakes. We're gonna have these moments in time. So what are we gonna do? You got to be able to handle it. You could go get medicated. Like I said, go smoke a joint with your doctor. There's nothing wrong with that. I told you I came up in the BC era. I was being arrested at school for marijuana. And here I was, I could really be diagnosed with PTSD. Well, it's kind of interesting now because we can see that the game has changed, right? We can see that, right? Ooh, take it easy. He did that on purpose. Oh my God. Get out of here. Anyway, yeah, that's a little bit better. I got to get a little bit cool down. Oh. Right. Oh. So you're going to be feeling this anxiety anyway. Okay? And again, if you have to take medication or whatever it is, go take it. But you have to understand that a modicum of this is coming from your device. Oh yeah, it's exciting your neurological system. And how much are you going to be emotionally invested? It was really great when I first moved here. It was really great. It's like, I should go on the other side, really. Oh, I just love every single breeze that comes on. It's pretty stifling here. Yeah, I should turn around. Oh, maybe. Oh, right. That's a little better. There you go. Yeah. Right? So what are we talking about? We're talking about the notions of a college professor actually kind of having done with it. And who talks them down? Of course, there's the dialectic between racial backgrounds, which are cultural backgrounds. We're so initiated into the R word. Ooh, the other R word. And by the way, retardation has nothing to do with a medical declination, right? That's not a medical determination. So retardation is actually used for people who aren't living up to their potential as a human being. I talked about before, the notion of stoning somebody. Well, everything in the Bible is metaphorical as well, and that's what the beauty of the book. It works on both levels, just like mythology. You're reading a straightforward story. Oh, such and such happens, and Demeter, and they have a kid, and the kid gets kidnapped, and it goes down to Hades, and all this stuff, and blah, 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 right? But it also works that Carl Jung found out that it works on your psyche as well. And they started using this terminology. Oh, the psyche. Oh, the subconscious. Oh, the collective conscious. Oh, the 100th monkey. Right? Where once something becomes normalized, right? Say like talking about race when you're really talking about cultures. You see what I'm saying? And then you have the dialectic between the generations as well. And Mark Fisher was really bummed out because he was looking at a future that was never going to arrive. And this future was being fed through his device. It's feeding us all. It's feeding this idea of being Neuralinked. I already proved that Neuralink is here. My wife proved it. And she married me in 2016. And I'm wondering, what the hell is going on? But guess what? I'm getting up and I'm going to work. I'm coming home and I'm cooking. I'm using my money to feed us, to run out in the middle of the night if she ever needs anything. Because I thought we were in a partnership. That's why I can't wrap my mind around the fact that, what's the matter? You can't have LGBT friends? You can't be part of that community? You have to have your own struggle session, right? And look what YouTube is allowing on here. Boy, they sure allow Alex Stein to be on here. He can come on here and do and say whatever he wants. That's interesting to me. Right? So part of the show is that I do talk about my projects. So I just spent an hour giving you guys a little bit of background about myself and how I'm proving these things. I'm using examples from popular culture, right? I was never a dude bro when it came to the American punk rock scene, and I don't think a lot of guys in the bands were. They were busy being in bands. They were busy writing songs, and that's what I was doing. I was busy writing songs until I realized that nobody gave a shit, Gordon. All they had were derogatory comments about myself, about my sexuality, about my ethnic background. Well, there you go. There you go. That says enough of that. Again, these people showed me numerous times over the years. And in the end, they had to use this weapon right here. And they were banking on that I was going to self-harm. Why? Because they're obsequious Philistines. Because they're bureaucrats. And what kind of world do we live in now? We're not supposed to be bureaucrats, man. Bureaucrats are bureaucrats. Those are statisticians. Well, in knowledge through data discovery, everyone's a statistician. Except all cookies. Right? We need this data. So let's move on a little bit, okay? I don't really care about any of this, what do you call it? Current events. I'm sorry, it's like, thank you for sticking with the current events portion of my show. I don't really care about that. You know who it reminds me of? It reminds me of the slope-shouldered manatee of a fuddy-duddy. Someone who's a phony and a fake. Someone who's a user. Someone who's a taker and not a receiver. Someone who participates in schadenfreude. You know, this is why it's important to have stuff like slapstick and not actually watching somebody get hurt. Right? I think the line in the ocean, right? I think the line in the ocean was drawn on this last Titanic. I think that it's a black swan. They started calling it the Streisand effect, when the effect that you're trying to go for backfires on you. I don't know where they come up with these terms, nor do I care. Speaking of one of the Rogans, whatever, right? He did a movie with Barbra Streisand. You know, and again, these people, they have an open check. They can just like make whatever movie they want and do all this stuff. They have carte blanche, and then look at them. Sorry, keys to the kingdom are closed. The kingdom is closed. So, like Bam Margera, whose brain is mush, and they could easily blame it on drugs and alcohol. Instead of getting off of his device and handling his business, sobering up, what does he do? He puts out a rap single. He wants to rap battle somebody. Like, what? Now, the reason I can write a song is because I've been doing it since I was about 15, 16 years old. That's why. And I'm fully confident in it. And I'm fully confident in finding a hook, right? That's why I know my projects are a reflection of me. And boy, I tell you, let me tell you guys something. The Sopranos keeps coming up in my scroll. I talk about what comes up in my natural algorithm. Okay, this is very important. Okay, this is what's being delivered to me based on what I hit as a thumbs up. Clicky, clicky, swipey, swipey, scrolly, scrolly, likey, likey. Trademarked. Right. And so this whole Richie Aprile thing is coming up, and it made me think. Now, do you guys remember this movie with Chaz Palminteri? He has a podcast now. Hey, don't forget, some people have about 7. Some people have 7 podcasts. I think Brian Callen has about 7 podcasts. I think a lot of these people, like Brian Callen, actually purchase bot farms, click farms. You guys know about that, don't you? Oh my God, I got 8,000 people watch, so I get $40. I get $40. Really? Because I watched a woman walk around parking lot to parking lot and ask for money too. And she got money as well. She probably got the equivalent of about $40 as well. So Brian Callen is no different than some woman walking around her parking lot asking for money. That's how I see it. Do you see? Do you see? Why do you need 7 podcasts? At one point, I did have two video channels. Now I'm back down to 1. I'm perfectly content in having 1 podcast. I can come on here and I can speak extemporaneously. I can show you that Cormac McCarthy wrote a play that's very similar to what happened with Mark Fisher, about an intellectual who gets disaffected. And who brings him back? A Christian, okay? And that's not to say that it's Christianity, but it's his belief. It's his faith that keeps him going. It's faith to know that things are going to get better. He's showing you that in this a priori thinking, where you're just like reading all this information, the Tommy Lee Jones character should have been writing a book at that point. Not being overwhelmed by all this information that he's taken in as a professor. It can be very overwhelming, right? There's your anxiety. There's all of your stuff right there. And that's what I did as well. And that's what one of the characters in Linoleum Blown Apart is going to do as well. He's going to hook up with this professor. Now, in case you don't know, I'm working on 2 properties, and this is what it's kind of whittling down to. I do have more. I think maybe tomorrow I'll do the Caruso of Mick Cafe versus the Dollar Menu crew. Don't think I ever forgot about that. This is like a Spielberg-type property that's very childlike. It should be PG-13. Linoleum Blown Apart is rated R. There is no doubt. And I think Golden Years, based on the Bowie song, should be PG-13. But I do like a PG property. And I think, you know, a G, rated G to PG property would be the Caruso of McCafe versus the Dollar Menu Crew. That's what I call it. You can call it whatever you want. I worked on a film. It was called Cop Gives Waitress $2 million Tip. Right? That was the name of the film. Sorry, I don't want to get people going in and out of the bathroom. Oh, maybe you have to ask some of my Harmony House friends about that. Who's going in the bathroom? We'll talk about that, guys, right here on this show. You guys, please stay tuned for that. I'm going to tell you guys everything, and only right here on this show. I'm not some phony LARPer who comes over and starts talking about things that were on my show to me in order to tell me that they've watched my show. Why don't you just say, yeah, dude, I watched your show. It sucks. Go after yourself. I'd be like, oh, okay, you want to have a drink? Yeah, sure. Right? So like I said, we dispel a lot of myths on this show. And I've been through a lot. I'm 57 years old. And don't you think that people like Bourdain would naturally gravitate into the film production game? Hey man, let's see if he can survive this. If he can handle this, then maybe he can handle the stressors and the pressures of Squizzy, right? Maybe he can handle the stressors and pressures of another television show, right? Because you can see the bear as coming from somebody like Anthony Bourdain. I'm not saying that there's a there, but I'm saying it's the next logical step. Why am I making this next logical step? And it's not because I watch Banana Splits and the Monkees, and I love Banana Splits, and I love Monkees. I'm very simian. But it's because of Nietzsche, falling in love with Wagner, and me getting to the point where I understand, yes, the medium is the message, in that you want every aspect of it. You want sound, you want songs, you want costume, right? You want drama, you want murders, you want mystery in there, obviously. What's the big show on Hulu? Who killed the Hamana Hamana? The what? The murder inside the building or whatever? There's always a murder mystery? Yes! It's as old as time. It's Shakespeare. Right? That's my big ballet move. I like ballet. I like movement. I like opera and that kind of stuff now that I'm older. Okay, I wasn't really... Oh, and by the way, a couple of nerds got on the bus the other day. Boy, they were tearing up that theater. They loved that theater movie. Theater Kids or whatever it's called. They love that. They were deconstructing it on the bus like they were going crazy. And so this, again, this is why I'm talking about things that I know. So in the Linoleum Blown Apart property, you have these parallels between the characters in Walter's world that ends in 1969. We don't even know what happens to the guy. And Lionel's world that goes from 1987 to 1996. Look at that. It goes to 69, if 6 could be 9, and then it goes to 96. And it's dealing with a certain type of music. Now, like I said, I have to be ready to see if it's going to go into the 3rd season, the 4th season. Like I said, I was really, these things that come up naturally in my scroll from Richie Aprile, and I love that character. I love the Richie Aprile character in The Sopranos. It's really great because his brother was Tony Soprano's friend. And then these guys, they go to prison and they come out 10 years later and they expect things to be the same, and they're not. You see, they're kind of being held in this bubble. And when they try to re-enter society the way I did when I went back to Michigan, they're like, no. You're not going to re-enter this society. We're going to target you in St. Clair Shores. We're going to target you with the police. We're going to target you with the Fed rats that are connected to disconnected records. And we're going to do much more than that. And we might even set you up. and we might even lie about it, and we might even collect your DNA. Whoa. Hey man, I'm just talking about The Sopranos, buddy. Take it easy. That's my real life. Okay? So when Richie Aprile comes back from prison, he's expecting everything to be the same, and it's not. His brother's dead, and now some of the guys, and I don't know if it has to do with Richie Aprile, but there's the character from Chaz Palminteri, who did, what's it called, Bronx Tale? Okay, remember the actor from Bronx Tale? He ended up doing 5 in the joint. He did 5 on accessory to murder. He might have did longer. I don't want to really speak for him, but he did over 5 years in prison for accessory to murder. Okay? And so I was working this last job with some phony, of course, and he's talking about pretty boys going to prison. You couldn't get any more handsome than that kid. He literally looks like De Niro. He literally was in a movie that everybody ostracized him for, right? He didn't come out fucking in the uncanny valley. Now did he? So this is why I only really talk to only certain people. These people try to pull the same shit over and over on me, man. Non-stop. I don't care. I don't care. Like I said, a member of the LGBT community, this woman, this gal, she used the same tactic as a police officer. Big mustachioed, tough guy police officer. He was, I think he was a Marine or something like that. Maybe his wife should find out that he's using the same tactic. Big tough guy using the same tactic as a member of the trans community, right? We all know it doesn't make a difference. It's our similarities. It's not our differences. That's what counts in this world. And so when you're talking about the linoleum blown apart universe, you have the trajectory of Walter, who starts off as a kid. He loses his father and uncle. He doesn't have a mother. He leaves the country because of the fascists. He comes over here and he makes a movie and he saves the studio. Then he gets to do whatever he wants. He makes a second movie. Then they hook him up with Jeremy Cloud. He makes 2 more movies that are very controversial, but they're really bizarre and everybody loves them. They make tons of money. And everybody expects him to make a movie. They all love him. And in this Zelig, I worked with an actor who worked on Zelig. In this Forrest Gump world, where Walter exists in this world that we're living in now, right? But he's in that world. He's in the world right here, right? This is why I know that they use really good AI in corporates, right? Corporate structures use great AI, but, right, the AI that they're giving us, no. You can't even come in comparison with what I can create in my mind. I always knew it. I've always been a very creative person. That's all I ever was. But again, once you're being attacked and hassled and just nonstop being LARPed, people coming up to you, you think you're in an honest conversation, and it turns out that they're just LARPers and idiots. I mean, it's really disheartening. Because like I said, we all seek this camaraderie. That's what we seek, right? Friendships, yeah. At 57 years old, I'll be keeping some people at an arm's length. You better know that's right. I'll never get close to anybody again. You can forget it. But again, we still seek this out. And then when you go to seek it out, you find out that they're just a LARPer and an idiot. They're repeating back something that you put on your video channel. And they're all gaslighting you. And they're waiting for you with medication, with meds in a bed, is what I call it. Meds in a bed. Right? That's pretty tough. I came through the other side of that. And like I said, what if they were putting these guys to the test? I'm talking about Anthony Bourdain and the kid from Lincoln Park. I'm sorry, it's not my generation, so I'll say what I want. It's my show. You want to leave a comment in the comment section? Go ahead. I don't buy bot farms. I don't have to buy a bot farm. I have every right to be on this show. I have every right to tell my story. And I'm not here for profit. There you go. There you go. This is a non-for-profit show. Do you guys ever think about anything that's not handed to you? That's not already pre-packaged? Oh, here, you don't have to worry about it because here's all the answers right here. Here they are. There's nothing to think about. There's nothing to question. Look at what's happening with my deconstruction of what happened with John Lennon. Okay? Nobody else thinks like I do. And so in the Linoleum Blown Apart universe, you have him hanging out with this guy from the Atlantic Power Elite structure who writes this book. Now, when I was a kid, there was a book called Everything You Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Too Afraid to Ask. Okay, they made a movie about it. Everything you always wanted to know about sex but you were too afraid to ask. This was a book from the 1970s. Everybody had that book on their shelf. Everybody bought this book. Why? Because it was just bawdy. It was cool to have. You understand? You know these books? It's kind of like On the Road with Kerouac and some of these guys. Right? It's kind of like these books. It's like these must-have books. You got to have this on your shelf. And again, these are books that you pull down every once in a while. You flip through it. You might not read it from cover to cover, but you do little by little. Right? So what this character in the Linoleum Blown Apart universe writes is one of these books. It's like The Golden Bough, or they call it The Golden Bow. I don't know which one. And it's one of these books that everybody just buys. It's like, wow, this is the craziest book I've ever read in my life. And it's almost like Finnegan's Wake, because he's talking about these indigenous cultures. He's talking about entheogens. He's talking about psychedelics. He's talking about the glottal stop in the way that they talk, in the way their language is. He's talking about their mating habits, as it were, right? Their sexual proclivities, their oddities, their fetishes. And this is 1950, and it's kind of cool, and everybody likes it. And so they're like, yeah, let's get this guy. Let's hook him up with Walter Square. And he was, relatively, that's what you want to show. You want to show this innocence. And when I'm working as an actor and I have to trust somebody, I have to maintain this innocence. If I write a story, I have to lose this corruption in my mind. I have to lose all of this notion of political corruptness, world corruptness, my own personal corruptness, my own personal participation in bad behaviors. And I have to go back into this innocent person. And I have to ask questions. This is what it really takes to be a truly, truly creative person. You have to lose this stuff, right? And you have to go back to this innocence, this playfulness. And you have to kind of start all over again. And that's what I do when I speculate about popular culture. They used to call it pop culture. I just call it pop culture. That's what it used to be called. Right? And don't forget, Kenneth Anger is still alive. He's right over here. Tony King is still alive. Tony King, who was doing drugs with John Lennon, is still alive. These people can be interviewed. And Nicholas Winding Refn interviewed Kenneth Anger. Right? And so, I talk about these people like that. Why? And I do talk about, and I don't appreciate being LARPed about when it comes to Jodie Foster. Because I talk about these things. Why? Because it was very scary. And I was in the punk rock milieu, and there was a band called Jodie Foster's Army, because all this crazy stuff was happening. They were worshiping Jodie Foster. Well, why did they do that? Because she started acting as a young child. And they were trying to tie that 1980s. Don't forget, this came out in 1980s. Shooting Reagan, shooting Lenin. Very bizarre. Using Holden Caulfield, which was required reading if you were in college prep. That's why I know this stuff now. Were these college prep courses. And I'm like, wow, there's something strange here. Okay? So I don't appreciate being LARPed about that, because it must have been very scary for her as well. Because what they were trying to do in here in the real world was they were trying to tie in these people like Taxi Driver, and they're saying, hey, these are real people out there. There's real people like that out there. They even made a film about it with, I can't remember what his name is. He owns Lookout Mountain now, where they shot a lot of propaganda films. And that goes into this property, Linoleum Blown Apart, once again. And just like Hail Caesar, you have the character who runs the studio, and who's he being courted by? He's being courted by the military-industrial complex. Take a look at the film Hail Caesar. It's one of the greatest. I love all of the Coen Brothers films without exception. I love Miller's Crossing the most, and I love The Man Who Wasn't There probably second, if not equal. The Man Who Wasn't There and Miller's Crossing are really the best, and their first one. I just can't stop. I would just keep going. Their films are great. I love Inside Llewyn Davis. Come on, guys. This is like, right? But anyway, so I digress, right? So, as I always do on my show, you can see I'm 80 minutes in, and we're going to keep going. There you go. That's for you. And that's for the other you. Right? It had to have been really scary. And it was really scary at the time. And then when you find out that these are just psychological operations that they're using on people, I mean, dude, that's pretty tough. And that's what they tried to do. And it did work. I told you, there was a guy in my neighborhood who watched The Deer Hunter on TV, and he got so triggered because he was in Vietnam, he started shooting his gun off on the porch, right in our neighborhood. Okay? And so that's what they're looking for. They're looking for these copycat people, these copycat instances out there. And that's what they were trying to scare everybody with, right? And then you find out 40 years later, stuff like this Manson narrative was completely fabricated for the most part. I was the one who talked about, well, yeah, you have this MK Ultra thing, and they use a butterfly because you go from the cocoon to you go from the chrysalis to the butterfly, whatever. Well, there's also 47 types of butterfly. There's 47 species, and what if there was 47 members of these elite families who are basically running this entire nexus, right? I don't know, seems a little far-fetched, but this is how you have to think when you're a creative person. And I shouldn't be vilified because I am a creative person. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle I am. Why? Because there's only two parties you could vote for. And you take a look at somebody like RFK Jr., he's actually doing talking points that are more aligned with the red pill right than the blue pill left, right? Maybe he needs to switch parties like Joe Scarborough, right? So you can see times change. You can see, that we're not into this 1980s, but we can pull back the lens without dollying in and making it too creepy. We can make it a little creepy. We can pull back the lens and we can see a lot of this nonsense. And we can figure out what are we going to put into this property and what are we not going to fixate on. I think what we want to do is try to put as much into the characters, right? So these characters that take place between 1987 and 1996 are really pretty hardcore Sopranos style, The Wire style characters. It's pretty gritty. It's punk rock. It's a lot of mud and blood and beer and sweat and leather jackets and spikes. Right? The beginning of tattoo culture. The beginning of all this stuff. And you can kind of see there's a great moment in Where the Buffalo Roam with Bill Murray. Bill Murray's version of Hunter S. Thompson, where his lawyer is defending some poor kid who gets caught 10 for 2, just like John Sinclair. Well, you got a couple of joints on you? We're going to send you to prison for 10 years. And then later on, his Hunter S. Thompson character runs into this guy, and what's he doing? He's covered in tattoos, and he's running guns down to South America. Right? You see? Do you see how you have this end of innocence, right? And they show that, perfectly. Again, I was a Sopranos watcher. I didn't really watch too many other shows. I don't really have time. Why do you think they call it TikTok? Because you're wasting your time, right? Just like you're doing with me? No, not really. Right? I'm at a 90-minute show, guys. I can keep going. I could do the show for 3 hours. I could do it every day. I could, when I'm done, I could go prep tomorrow's show right now for about 2 or 3 hours and come on and do 3 hours every day. I could pitch my show every single day. I could pitch Linoleum Blown Apart, and I could pitch Golden Years. But I think that I'm going to just kind of leave it to those 2 properties. But I could pitch the Caruso of McCafe. I could pitch Animals. Right? I could pitch The Ghost of Mr. Scaredy Cat. I got more somewhere. I got them all written down. Right? And I told you about there's a now Facebook doesn't need any money, allegedly. Right? Facebook, they're like so wealthy. Oh my God, they hire all these Fed rats, okay, who crank the algos on people and play games. Well, maybe one day they will, right? Because everybody flatlines. They might reach a certain point where they kind of level off a little bit. And I already came up with a great tie-in game show for Facebook, right? It's called Life Swap, or the Name Game. And you find people who have your name, and the pilot episode would be me and Gordon Ison from Manchester, England. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. And we would switch lives because we have the same name. We've seen this show before. It's a no-brainer. The template's already there. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The template for Linoleum Blown Apart is there. And when Lionel gets done with Jeremy Cloud, and like a cloud, Puff the Magic Dragon, he comes in. Oh, I'm sorry, it should be my left hand. Left-handed cigarettes. He leaves. He's gone. Okay? And now what is he going to do? Well, that's when he hooks up and he starts working on Scorpius XL. That's where I left off before. Okay? And Scorpius XL is the story about leaving the planet. Just like what? Just like the very first play that he saw his wife was involved in. 40 years before. I'm not 40, I'm sorry. 20 years before. 20 years ago. He still has this in his mind. So what does he do? He goes and meets a professor. And what did this professor do? Yeah, when this professor was young, he wrote some science fiction books. All right, we'll have to create all of those books. And I will be creating those books for the novelization for Linoleum Blown Apart. And so he has written 3 or 4 books, and he kind of goes, he can vacillate from writing fiction into, writing, like these thinker books. These more philosophical books like Heidegger, Being in Time, talking about the Dasein, talking about we are, therefore we think, therefore we speak, therefore we do. Right? It's not I think, therefore I am. It's first we are being, and that's what these guys tried to bring us back to, into being there. That's how they created that film with is it Chauncey Holt? I always get the name mixed up. Peter Sellers. Right? It's about being. And so when Peter Sellers, and they just remade it with Charlie Day, basically. Right? So this template for Linoleum Blown Apart is already there. The template, and by the way, the template for just the whole Napoleon thing is there because there's going to be 2 Napoleons coming out. Ridley Scott and Spielberg. And by the way, Beau is Afraid and Barbie go together. I like Barbenheimer. Barbenheimer's cool. It's very funny. It's very clever. But Oppenheimer goes with Atomic City. Okay? So the Barbie film goes with Beau is Afraid. Okay? So you have the female, and then you have the male beta, right? I don't know what happens with Beau is Afraid. I think I saw one of the guy's films already, right? He did a talk with Scorsese. You can watch that right here on YouTube. Yay! Take it easy, Google. Right? So this template is already here. And so when Walter goes and meets this professor is older. And he doesn't really want anything to do with Walter. He's like, listen, man, I'm an old guy, just like me, right? Just like me. I'm an old guy. So I've already been through this already. This is what he's trying to explain to Walter. Walter, this might be 30 years, I don't know. He was born in 1915, okay? And it's 1960, okay? And so, shut up. The numbers. So, so,
don't trip. I'm finna go up.
yeah, I bet you are. So, we'll wrap it up in a little while. I don't care. I do my show homeless from a park. I'm not really worried about anything. I've been LARPed for years. But what we have is Walter meeting this old man. Now, this is a parallel to another film that they made called Of Reasonable Service, where Godwin, the hero slash anti-hero, well, he's the hero, really, he meets an admiral. And so Walter's going to do this in his real life, because we all do. You're going to meet somebody who, as a mentor, maybe an older person, right? And so he does. But this guy is bitter. He's old and he's bitter and he's had it. Why? Because he's jaded. He's jaded the way I should be jaded. The way they expected me to self-harm, and that included my wife. The way they expected me to just drop out and give up, and I never will. But he's old, he's older than me, and he is very jaded. And he doesn't care about this anymore, because he's resigned himself to just going through the motions. And a lot of us do. Look at how old I am, man. I'm 57 years old. And I've had it with very specific people, not the world. I'm not running around angry at the world. I'm not angry at something that isn't tangible. I'm disappointed in very specific people. And I talk about it on my show. Why? Because it's my show and you can go after yourself. Okay? And so this professor who Walter meets, he's pretty much the same way. And Walter comes along and he's like a gnat. He's just like bothering him. It's like, what do you want? No, I don't care about going to space anymore. I'm an old man. I've settled in my life here. I have tenure. F off. And Walter's just still curious. I like what you said in your book about, possibly going to another star system. Oh, what do you know about going to a star system? You're from Hollywood, right? But he doesn't know Walter's story yet, right? Because when you start meeting somebody who isn't like you, all of a sudden you start realizing how much similarities you have. And that's why these morons who run with gangs, they can't wrap their minds around it, because they have their own little proclivity, their own little gang. Right? And they are similar to each other. You can't be similar like them. You can't be part of their little honeycomb hideout. Oh my God. Whatever. I don't want to be. Trust me. I know it's organized, and I think it's pathetic. So Walter brings this innocence back into this man's life, almost like the child that he never had. And it doesn't matter if he has a child, it's somebody different bringing this, hey, let me show you your work. Don't you think, as an old man, I'm 60 years old sitting here, don't you think I'd want somebody to say, hey man, Gordon, I really like that. You did a cover of a Motown song? That's pretty cool, man. Not one person. Look at me. Look at me. Am I angry at the world? I've got people accosting me. I'm not going around beating people up, mad because nobody likes my work. I got people threatening to turn me into the new Manson, threatening to set me up right to my face. And I got my wife is involved in this. Absolutely, man. How do you think that makes me feel? It's pretty tough. So don't you come on here. I don't buy bot farms and I don't buy click farms. And I'm not on here to make money. My life has more worth than any dollar bill or any cryptocurrency that you could ever have. But apparently, they're showing us that we're living in a time where we're not laughing at slapstick anymore. We're actually laughing at real people getting hurt. And it's not about the hurt, guys. It's about the recovery. And thank you very much for watching my show. I appreciate it more than you'll ever know.